All right. Good evening, everyone. I want to use this opportunity to welcome all of us on today's Safe O'Clock Health and Safety Interactive Workshop. So today, like you know, our topic is line of fire. So we have different experiences, different views, and different perspectives or perceptions about this line of fire. So today will be an opportunity for us to interact, discuss, ask questions, enlighten ourselves, and improve our knowledge. So I welcome all of you once again. And leading today's presentation is Mr. David. So without wasting much time, I will give the floor over to Mr. David. Okay, it's up now. You can continue.
All right, you can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. Good evening, gentlemen. Obviously, there's no ladies in our midst. My name is David Obreki. I happen to be an HSC superintendent working in one of the construction sites here in Indonesia. I'm also a graduate IOCH. I'll be leading the discussion today on the topic, rather, on line of fire in the workplace. Having said that, what's wrong? Where is this? I'm going to, okay. So having said that, so for today's presentation, we shall be looking at one, the definition of a line of fire, life-saving rules as it applies to line of fire, industry statistics on line of fire, what makes compliance with line of fire difficult, major hazards associated with line of fire, hazard identification of line of fire risk, preventing line of fire incidents, and of course, the 10 commandments of a line of fire. Before I proceed, I would like to share, like I said, that line of fire cannot be emphasized without, stressing the important part it plays in the IOPG, which is the International Association of Oil and Gas Producers, life-saving rules. I'm just going to share a brief story about how the life-saving rule was enacted and when line of fire was identified as one of the core life-saving rules, because the fact remains that there is no way you can talk about line of fire without, speaking about the life-saving rules of IOPG. So IOPG actually adopted this life-saving rule from one of the giant IOCs, oil and gas producers, which, of course, for the purpose of disclaimer, I wouldn't want to mention name of organization. Oil and gas organization noticed that in their construction activities, the rate of fatality and high potential events was very high when it comes to specific activities. So what they did over the years, they realized that, multiple fatality was taking place on daily and weekly basis in their construction site. So the top management decided to sit together to brainstorm and look for a way to ensure that they minimize and cut down the rate of fatality in their operations. Now, in the process of brainstorming, what they did first was to actually identify those critical activities, where they recorded the highest fatality. And then line of fire didn't happen to be one of those activities. And that is when we use the life-saving rules, working at height, permit to, that is working with work authorization, confined space, driving, and all of that. But not on after the brainstorming together, identifying these critical activities, then they came up with these life-saving rules implementation, and of course the consequences management and disciplinary actions. So by the time they implement the life-saving rules, they realized that just within a space of 3 months, the rate of fatality reduced drastically. Where they were recording 15 fatality, it dropped to like 1. And in the subsequent months to come, they now realized that fatality became a thing of history. And that is to tell them the effectiveness, how effective the life-saving rules was. And as a result of that, the IOPGs, which is the International Association of Oil and Gas Producers, saw what these giant oil and gas company did, and they decided to adopt these life-saving rules. So when this life-saving rules was adopted, all oil and gas producing companies that were member and operating under the IOPG automatically had to implement same life-saving rules. Not until 2018. In 2018, again, they sat down, to have a committee, a conversation. They brainstormed and said, from these 12 life-saving rules, we want to cut it down to 9 life-saving rules. So what they did was, for the under driving, they had 3 categories where they said, do not use your mobile phone while driving. You must use your seat belts while driving, and of course, follow prescribed journey management plan while driving. So, but these 3, they group it to be 1. So they just call it driving. So in the year 2018, they revised the 12 life-saving rule and made it a 9 life-saving rule. And in this 9 life-saving rule, of course, they removed some of the key areas of the life-saving rule. And that was when they introduced 2 new life-saving rules. The 2 new life-saving rules that was introduced, one of it happens to be the line of fire and earthwork, of course. So the reason why they actually included the line of fire, they now realize that in the oil and gas construction, the critical activity where they now recorded the highest fatality and of course high potential incident was in the line of fire. So that was how the line of fire came about. So having said this, I will share a little story of how the line of fire became part of the life-saving rules for the International Association of Oil and Gas Producers. I would like to play this video. Let's get a glimpse from it. Then from there, we can swing over to the main presentation proper, because what we are going to discuss is centered on 4 core areas. And these 4 core areas has to do with, when you talk about the line of fire, has to do with drop objects, moving vehicle, and of course, pressure release. So this is what this video is going to display for us to see. It's just a 2 minutes or less than 2 minutes video to watch. All right, so that is it about the video. So I think in one of the slides, I'm going to explain more about what the video. So coming back to the topic for today, which is the line of fire. So what is a line of fire? Because our main objective today is to ensure that even if we don't learn so much, but there are two key focus areas which everyone must have to understand and take home, take back to their various work sites. And of course, which has to do with what is a line of fire and the major hazards of a line of fire. So as you could see on the screen, the line of fire refers to those work situations where worker could be struck by something which suddenly starts to move or releases energy unexpectedly. Or you could rather refer to say the line of fire is any zone within a work area, that is perimeter, safe distance, where there is a risk of serious injury from a moving object, a vehicle, or pressure release, and of course, drop objects. We could simply put that when someone is in a harm's way, all right, the person is in the line of fire. Take, for instance, you are standing at the direction of the opening of your house door, standing in the direction of arm's way, in front of your door, where if the door is open, it will hit you immediately. So such position could be referred to as a line of fire. Standing behind a reversing vehicle, right? You're standing in a line of fire. Standing on a suspended load, lifting activity is ongoing and someone is walking past under the suspended load, that person could be said to be in the line of fire. Also, you are standing close to an air compressor on the work site where the air compressor is actually running. If the hose that is connected to the air compressor gets snapped or pulled out, it's going to whip you. You are standing, which automatically means you're standing in a line of fire. So if you are working with a jack, for instance, and you're very close to it, maybe under a bed, you also found a line of fire. If you are standing close to maybe a pipeline that is under tension, okay, it's like there is fluid flowing through it, and of course there are flanges, there are valves, and you are very close to it, you are standing in a line of fire. So these are we could say that on nearly every day's job, there is potential that something could either hit or spray or pinch or crush. So one of the areas where the highest rate of line of fire incidents is usually recorded is on hand and finger injury, most time referred to as pinch points. You see, most of the incident recorded in the construction site is either due to somebody sustain injury in the hand or in the finger, bruises, laceration, cuts. So these kickback of the machine, that person is putting himself in a line of fire, or maybe working with a grinding or cutting power tools without a guard, the hand of that person is a line of fire. So as we can see here, like I mentioned earlier, during the course of my putting this presentation together, I had to do some research to gather some data on line of fire. It's very, very difficult to, get data related to line of fire. However, the IOGP, which is International Association of Oil and Gas Producers, on yearly basis, do carry out their analysis based on the safety performance data or reports submitted by most of the oil and gas producers. So based on their reports of last year, which is 2022, it was discovered that line of fire recorded over 84% of fatal incidents and high potential event incidents. So only line of fire alone, out of 100%, they discovered that most of the incidents, fatal incidents that occur, either happen as a result of due to maybe a line of fire hazard, in the workplace. So that goes to tell you how high, how critical, this line of fire hazard and risk is. And I mean, it calls for more attention, for people to pay much attention to line of fire hazard and risk in the workplace. And next to line of fire was energy isolation, which is 16 points. I mean, you can imagine the gap between 48% to even 16%. And what happened based on the story I shared previously, you could notice the line of fire was incorporated into the indicators just barely 2018. 2018, yeah, they discovered. That is from the pie chart. So when you look at the bar chart, you realize that in 2022, line of fire has the highest reported and recorded fatal potential incident. Even in 2021, it was a line of fire. In 2020, the same line of fire. Even in 2019, line of fire recorded the highest incident. It was in the year 2018 that work authorization, which is permit to work, had the highest, fatal incident record. So based on this data, we could see that line of fire has the highest recorded fatality. In fact, most of the fatality and high potential incident happening across the globe is related to line of fire incidents. So now, based on the clip I played from the line of fire, which has to do with the life-saving rules, as you could see, yeah, it's written, keep yourself and others out of the line of fire. So this is referred to as rule statements, okay? This is the rule statement for this particular life-saving rule, which is line of fire life-saving rule. It says, keep yourself and others out of the line of fire. Then, of course, it has its action. The same applies to all the life-saving rules. But for the line of fire, the rule statement is keep yourself and others out of the line of fire. Why the action is that this must be stated to all workers and even to ourselves. I position myself to avoid moving objects, vehicles, pressure release, drop objects. I establish and obey barriers and exclusion zone. I take action to secure loose objects and report potential drop objects. So mostly before you start any activity, which from your risk analysis, you've discovered that there is a potential for line of fire risk, you need to answer these questions. You need to ask yourself, have I positioned myself to avoid maybe moving objects, moving equipment, moving vehicle? The work we are about to commence to do, does it have anything to do with pressure? So pressure in this case, we are not referring to only pressure, we're also referring to stored energy, static energy, okay? We're also referring to electricity as well. So you need to consider if the activity involve any of such stored energy. Then of course, working at height, which is drop objects. So all these questions need to be answered. That helps you to be able to put mitigation in place, proper mitigation in place. So yeah, it's just from, you could see that the target, yeah, our priority is to make sure that we eliminate the hazard. We eliminate the hazard completely, entirely. But in a situation where it's not possible for us to eliminate the hazard. We want to now focus on getting people, creating an awareness for workers, for people to remove themselves from the line of fire. So that is where, utilizing your training, utilizing your toolbox meeting, your pre-job meeting to create more awareness, to educate workers on the risk and dangers of line of fire, and also to perform the last minute risk assessment before any job is carried out. So what this pictorial here is telling us, you can see we circle the center, that is human, all right? Because in line of fire, you have 3 barriers and you must cross-check and examine against these 3 barriers. You have the physical barrier, you have the process barrier, and you have the human barrier. So for the physical barrier, we are referring to barricades, exclusion zone, you understand, engineering controls that you put in place. Why for the process barrier, we are referring to the work instruction, the SOP, the method statements that you are going to have been written down for you to be able to perform this job in a safe manner. Is that barrier in place, which is your permit to work, safe system of work? Are they actually in place? As the hazard identification done to determine if the job Human actually is the supervision you provide on site, construction supervision, team lead supervision, safety supervision and monitoring. So these are the barriers we are referring to. But our number one priority is to see how we can be able to design that to eliminate, the line of fire from the activity. But in a situation where that cannot be done, then is to sensitize awareness to the workers to see that they remove themselves from the line of fire. They become conscious and aware of the line of fire. Because when we talk about line of fire most times they are not obvious, okay? They are not obvious, but they are constant. They are constant. Some of the line of fire risk, you can't see them, you can't feel them. For example, electricity, all right? Pressure, and even tension. They are there, you are close to them, but you cannot know that these sockets that I'm standing close to, or maybe this cable that has gotten broken in a particular spot, and maybe peradventure my body comes in contact with it, I could be exposed to electric shock or electrocution, of course. So when we speak about line of fire, not all the time, right from the risk assessment that you can be able to identify all the line of fire, but some are invisible. They are invisible as the work progresses, those hazards will come out. They makes compliance with line of fire rule difficult. All right, so there are complexity, in the jotted down 3 areas I know, yes, that having compliance in terms of line of fire is very difficult. Take, for example, risk normalization, workers' perception, or line of fire risk. Some of them doesn't have good knowledge about the line of fire risk. Some of them, they've been doing a particular thing the same way for many years. So that makes them to become complacent. They feel this is the way we have always been doing the job. So even when the risk, the hazard is staring them in the face, even if someone is telling them there is danger, they don't believe, because I've been doing this thing, I've been putting myself in this position, and nothing has happened to me in the last 25 years. I'm sure some of us, we are very conversant with what I'm saying. You see the construction guys challenging you, telling you, I have 25 years of experience, and I don't need to use my hand glove to carry out that job. I don't need to put on the safety glass. Maybe it's inconveniencing me or stuff like that, thereby exposing themselves to the line of fire risk. Also, in the work site, we have a lot of CMOPs activity happening. You could see maybe the scaffolding crew working above, and just below them, you have civil team doing some excavation activity, exposing them to the risk of drop objects, and perhaps as based on the safe system of work we already have in place, coordination meeting has been conducted. Both teams are aware of the hazard. But remember, like I said, these hazard, line of fire hazard, they are most times they are really not obvious. All right, they are just there invisible. As the work progresses, before you know it, they just surface, and that could lead to maybe a fatal incident or a serious incident or even an high potential incident. You know, so that most times, even after the coordination meeting, all right, if the crew working above now change their working pattern or do something different out of what was discussed and agreed, most times they would not have the time to communicate with the other group working below them. So that is where the complacency, the shared accountability, you know, to comply with the line of fire safety controls becomes difficult, because things happen within minutes, within seconds. So they don't get to inform those working below them. And lastly, the line of fire hazard, like I've mentioned, pressure, electricity, tension, these are often not seen. They are not known to people at the site, but of course, they are threats, they are big risk, you know, to people. Once they are triggered, the consequences can be very devastating. Take, for example, a vessel that is under pressure, or a pipeline that is under tension, or the web sling snaps, the load is coming down on the person. It will take the grace of God to escape maybe a permanent disability, total permanent disability, or a partial permanent disability. So yeah, before carrying out any job, these are questions we need to ask ourselves. We have two categories of person. Either you are asking the team, and also you're asking yourself. So for the question you need to ask yourself for a task that you have identified that, yes, there is a potential for line of fire risk, yeah, is that how can you and your team stay safe? So these are questions the team lead, supervisor need to answer. Have the line of fire hazard been discussed during the toolbox meeting? Are there hardwares, process, and human barriers in place? I believe I have explained this. I've mentioned some good example of hardwares, like when I said exclusion zone, barricade. When you put hard barricade, this is what we are referring to as the hardware barriers. When those your hand tools, you know, you attach tools lanyard, these are hardware barriers. For example, a rotating guard machine, you have a protective guard in place. These are hardware barriers. Why for the process is your permit to work, the method statement, okay, the work instruction, the checklist, pre-use job checklist, all of that is the process. You need to check, have we implemented this, you know, prior to starting that job? And lastly, the human barrier, which is very key. That's why for every job, you will see a supervisor is assigned for supervision, okay? Safety personnel is assigned to, you know, provide safety supervision and coverage to cover the activity. Then coming to the second category, which is yourself, you need to ask yourself these questions. How do I stay out of the line of fire? Where is the energy? And what can go wrong? That is the most important question in any activity that should be asked on the construction before performing any job. What could go wrong here? Then you start your last minute risk assessment, analyzing what could go, you know, considering people, the environment, the equipment, the materials you are going to work with. Are they going to pose any form of a line of fire risk? So you need to analyze all of these, and you need to know, identify which barrier needs to be in place, you know, before that job is carried out. Now, for the sake of time, I've only just drafted one scenario to share. Actually, when you speak about line of, we all know there are millions of, incident scenario studies when it comes to line of fire. But for the purpose of this session and for the consideration for time, I would only
Is your network is hanging or what? Unmute yourself, Dave.
Okay. I didn't even know that I've gone up. So can you see my screen, or I need to reshare?
You need to share it again. We cannot see it.
Not yet.
Just click on that share screen.
I've not even seen the shared screen yet. Okay, I've seen it. So where did I stop before I left? Was it on the incident scenario?
Yes, you are still on this incident scenario.
All right. So like I was saying, based on this scenario, the three major barriers that need to be analyzed, two of those barriers failed. There was no physical barrier, and of course, there was no human barrier. There was no spotter, no flagman, to navigate, to control the movement of the driver while he was actually revising that truck. So that also led to these fatal incidents. Okay, and funny enough, the IP, that was involved in this incident has been childless for over 10 years. Okay, was actually expecting a baby. Same day he died, same day the wife actually put to bed a bouncing baby boy. So you can imagine the implication. This is somebody who has been expecting for 10 good years. Only the day the wife put to bed a bouncing baby boy, he died in the place of work as a result of negligence. Okay, negligence, complacency. This is how we've been doing it based on his perception. No need to worry. The flagman, the sportman wasn't there. During inspection of the truck, they discovered the reverse alarm not working. They didn't bother because they feel nothing could go wrong. So this incident happened as a result of failure to compliance to identifying a line of fire risk and hazard. All right, so here are some of the examples of major hazard associated with a line of fire. Okay, so one of line of fire is moving vehicles and heavy equipment. So imagine someone standing behind moving, imagine what could happen to that person. So that person is actually in a line of fire. Two, lifting and hoisting. During a lifting and hoisting activity or lifting operation activity, imagine someone is under the load, you can see here, and the webbing sling gets broken or snap, and that load happens to fall and drop on the person below. What will happen to that person? So the consequences, of course, will be devastating. The third one is working at height, which is drop object hazard. Okay, so you could see the guy here with the hand-tool and with a hand-tool lanyard, of course. So if the hand-tool lanyard gets broken or snaps, and that spanner drops to the ground and hit on someone, or someone is directly below or beneath where this guy is walking, and this spanner drops on the person, of course, that person is in a line of fire. The fourth one is tension lines. That is pipelines under tension, springs that we are using, wire rope sling. There are stored energies on these working materials, working tools. Okay, if you're working with such material, you need to stay clear, keep away from those OCs that are under pressure, those pipelines that are under pressure, the joint points, the valve points. You need to stay away from such area, because if anything should escalate, right, the outcome is usually not good. The fifth one is objects will roll or fall potential. Imagine a truck driver who is, driving with his vision obscured, with his vision blocked, right? So those load, there is no guarantee for those load. And if those load is not secured properly, they are not lashed, they could actually roll and fall on someone, who may be in the line of fire. Then the sixth one is pressurized equipment. Remember, we said there are core four major areas: pressure release. So pressurized equipment, the compressed gas cylinders that we use in our various workplaces. These are missiles, okay? These are observe a group of compressed gas cylinder, I think oxygen gas, was positioned just less than 0.5 meter, close to a 550 tons crawler crane, all right? And a lot of persons were there, they never saw anything wrong with it, right? So he intervened. When he intervened, I asked them, please remove this gas cylinder from this position. And someone replied in and said that those cylinders are empty, all right? So like we said, risk perceptions, that's lack of knowledge about the line of fire risk. And some of them believe that line of fire only applicable to humans. Line of fire not only applicable to humans, all right? As safety, we want to protect lives. We want to also protect equipment, prevent equipment from getting damaged. We also want to protect the environment, to prevent impact on the environment. So they were not viewing that, okay, if the cylinder gets explode, that is also will cost the company loss. They did not reason it that way, and they did not know that that compressed cylinder still has residual content, substances, that could actually react. And they were not also aware of this risk. And we had to go over and educate these guys, coach them, create more awareness, remind them, of the risk, that's just a sleeping or a silent killer just there. And you are saying because it's empty, there are some content still left on it. And if maybe peradventure the crane swing towards the direction of the gas cylinder and hits that gas cylinder, the gas cylinder falls to the ground and the valve regulator of the gas cylinder pulls off, that is a jet flying, which if it happens to meet someone in a line of fire, in a harm's way, of course, we all know it's a fatal incident. Seventh, we have machineries and tools. Imagine someone being very close to a rotating pad, being very close to the abrasive rotating disc. What will happen? We've recorded so many. In fact, we've lost count. A lot of workers who have been involved in this type of line of fire incident. Some, I would say, lucky. Some luck has run out of their side because they've gotten their fingers amputated. So these are hazards that we need to identify for activity that involve the use of grinding, cutting machine. We need to sensitize the worker on the risk of pinch points, sharp edges, and line of fire hazards. The eighth one is electrical equipment. Remember I said currents, you don't see currents. You don't You don't until it shocks you before you feel it. You know, this is invisible hazard. So we need to identify also the work that's to be performed. Is there electricity? Is there an electricity risk? You know, electrical hazard. So all these need to be taken into cognizance as well. 9 is projectile. Some of the drilling machine we are working with, the drilling bit. Imagine someone comes in contact with the drilling bit, what will happen? And also if there is a kickback, you know, and even these drilling machines are used for crushing of hard rocks, crushing of the soil. So these also generate flying particles. So these particles also, if someone not well protected, not having face protection, double face protection, like maybe using the face shade and safety glasses, and any of these fragments happens to come in contact with the face of the person, you know, that person has put himself in a line of fire by not using, maybe wearing face shade. And lastly, pushing and pulling. This is ergonomy hazard, maybe trying to pull a load in an awkward position. And I could tell that, was it some days ago, I saw a group of workers, you know, lifting some roofing zinc with sharp edges, you know, with their hand, and not using the appropriate safety hand glove. You know, I had to stop them, intervene, explain to them the risk of them putting themselves in the line of fire. You know, you just, how can you manually lift this when we have the right tools, the right equipment, you know, to transport these from this point to the other? Of course, I had to address it with the supervisor and not with the workers per se. So here are some of good examples of some of the tools, items we can find in our workplaces, which has stored energy. And this energy, if triggered and comes in contact with someone that is exposed to them, this could lead to serious injury or even fatality. For example, a car tire that got explode, someone working with jack exerting excess pressure, you know, hydraulic, battery, the compressed gas. I believe I've spoken about some of these items, shattered grinding disc, you know, and wire rope sling, shocks, straps that are used. If these things get broken and any of the parts happens to touch someone, of course, the person will sustain a serious injury. So these are things we need to analyze and advise workers to ensure that while they are working, please stay out of the line of fire. Why? That is what we refer to as, if the elimination control will not work, then you have to make sure you now have to focus on educating workers to remove themselves, remove people from the line of fire risk. I think that is the most suitable control. People removing themselves, that's the most reliable control. So these are the core 4 hazards, you know, like I've already explained, but there are some check questions, more like a checklist. You know, you need to ask yourself these questions, have the right answers to this question, making sure that control has been taken for each of these questions before they go ahead with the activity. Like, for example, at the laydown, the workshop area, where we have very high use of the forklift equipment, we want to daily ask ourselves before they start using such sophisticated equipment, when could things begin to move? Where are the pinch points? You know, what control are there for people working in proximity, working very close to the forklift? That is why you need to put the exclusion zone, the safe distance, to keep people and restrict people from entering into the unauthorized zone. And also for pressure, where is any stored energy that could be released? What could cause pressure to release? Are there any hidden pressure? So this is more like a checklist. The same goes for drop. You could ask yourself this question: what could fall? Where could it fall? What can you do to prevent the fall and face safely? So these are very, very good questions. I'm sure in our workplace, most of the activity that has to do with these core 4 areas or focus areas, we already have an existing pre-use checklist, all right? But the thing is, like we said, non-compliance. A lot of people don't go through the checklist because it's routine and it has become boring for them. You know, every day, why do I just have to? So they don't even read through it. They just tick, tick, tick and put it there. Sometimes they don't even tick, but it's very important because it's there to, these tools have been provided, is there to save life, actually. So it's also very important we emphasize on operators, on drivers, making use of this checklist before they start their daily activity or operations. So I think this should be okay. Second to last slide. So how do we prevent line of fire incidents? Of course, we have the hierarchies of control. So for line of fire risk and hazard, this is the hierarchy of control. First, you need to eliminate, to apply the elimination control. What do we mean by applying the elimination control? Is by removing objects from elevated work areas that could fall or strike employee who are working below, or taking equipment out of services that could pose a major cash-in or between hazard. All right, so if that is not possible, because depending on the task, some tasks you may need equipment, you know, to carry out, for example, lifting of load. You cannot eliminate the use of, eliminate arts, the use of crane. Of course, you have to use the crane. So if we are using the crane, what control are we putting in place to mitigate the risk of line of fire? So that is what we are implying here. So because you are lifting, already we know someone under a suspended load, you know, object falling from height. So the controls are simple: the physical barrier, barricading the area, putting the safety signs, you know, to warn people of the impending dangers, making sure that use competent person for operating the equipment, making sure the equipment, like we said, the check must be done, pre-use check, you know, perform. So all these control need to be in place, making sure that only the people who participate during the lifting debrief are inside the lifting operation zone, you know, lifting operation area. So these are controls that can follow. Then for the engineering controls, having the physical barrier in place, that has been spoken about. Guards around moving parts, like your grinding machine, cutting, circular saw, all of that type of power tools. Of course, they might have their guard. Those are engineering control. Toe board on the scaffold. We've talked about one of the major hazard, drop objects, right? So working at elevation, you must make sure the components of the scaffold are all complete, or if you are using motorized elevating working platform, must be inspected, certified, and fit for purpose, fit for use. Lanyard to secure equipment and tools, right? So for if you are transferring tools to height, using a tools bag, very important. Securing hand tools they are using to work at height, using nets to minimize, you know, fall of any object. So these are engineering controls that could be implemented. Then in a case where all of this control has been put in place, lastly, you can come in, you can use your PPE, wear your PPE. PPE is the last line of defense, but PPE is not as effective as the engineering and administrative control, even as the elimination. Elimination is the most effective, followed by the engineering control. But of course, if any task is to be carried out, you must use the mandatory PPE for the task. So that is why, yeah, we said wearing mandatory PPE for the job. PPE should never be relied on in place of eliminating hazard or engineering hazard. That is secondary. PPE is secondary. So first, when we're talking about the line of fire, hazard, and risk, we want to consider elimination control first. If we cannot achieve that, then we move on to engineering control. PPE can be combined with any of these two control. So it can help to minimize danger if you do find yourself a victim of a line of fire injury. So PPE does not eliminate the hazard. But it only reduce, the impact, injury that will be sustained, maybe if there is a top event. So we need to ask ourselves this question: what are the line of fire scenario in your workplace? I'm sure there are quite a lot of them, and how are they being managed? So going forward, these are questions we need to ask ourselves. For every task, we need to look at, is there a line of fire hazard here or risk? And if there is, we do a last minute risk assessment by, stopping, looking critically and analyzing, what is the line of fire risk, and of course, managing those risks with either the engineering control or elimination. So lastly, we have what is called the 10 commandments, line of fire 10 commandments. Okay, I'm just going to read this out quickly. The 10 commandments of line of fire. The first one is never put your body or body parts in the path of a moving object. Always point out potential line of fire hazard before using machinery or any hand tools. The second one is never position yourself under a suspended load or material. Always use tagline to stay clear of suspended load. Stand clear of load materials being lifted, rope, or pass up or down. The third one is use the proper tools. Use the proper tools to keep your hands and body out of the line of fire. So for most times you see workers having pinch point incidents, maybe when they are moving or shifting metal plates, like those checker plates during installation on structures. They have what they call the J hook. Rather than using their hand directly, exposing their hand to the line of fire, pinch points hazard, they could use the J hook, which keeps their hand at a safe distance, and it helps them to move the checker plate or the metal plate, the shell plate to position without having body-to-body contact of their hands. The fourth one is never use personal protective equipment as the only protection from line of fire hazard. PPE should be used as the last line of defense against hazard. Always control or eliminate the hazard. This process is done to take away sharp edges. The fifth one is never anticipate that you can move your hands or body out of the line of fire in a timely manner. Okay, keep your body and hands clear of line of fire hazard. You're not as fast as you think. Okay, take note of that. Line of fire in a timely manner, you are never as fast as you think. Incidents happen within a blink of an eye. Incident happens within seconds. The sixth one, ensure the task you are performing is not putting co-workers in the line of fire. I think this is the definition of safety, ensuring your safety and the safety of those working around you. So when you're doing your risk analysis for line of fire, you're not only considering yourself, but those that your actions and inactions will impact on as well. Be aware of your surrounding and the location where you are working. Very, very important. Situational awareness. Number 7, consider the line of fire hazard from tools that may slip or fall. Always take the time to make sure your tools are secured before performing elevated work. Stand clear and be aware of tools that could fall from overhead work being performed, and always respect barricades. Okay, the 8th one is always identify, eliminate, or control line of fire hazard that may be created by co-worker. Notice the untapped edge, doing and identify possible line of fire hazard. The 9th commandment of line of fire is know and stay clear of line of fire hazard created by other work being performed. Be aware and communicate with other craft who may be working in the area, and never work underneath elevator. This is where CMOPS coordination comes in. There have to be effective communication. If for any reason your activities is intercepting, with other group of company, or maybe you're saying company concurrent activity, you must ensure CMOPS meeting is conducted where both group will need to share the hazard associated with the activities and what mitigation controls they put in place to prevent, the release of hazard, and also means of communication in case anything goes wrong or goes out of control. They can quickly communicate their neighbors for them to also evacuate the danger zone or the line of fire. Then lastly, never place yourself in the path of any potential release of stored energy. Whenever you are working on tools or equipment, always unplug energy source. Like I've mentioned, electricity, pressure, lifting slings, all these are stored, potential release of stored energy. So that is it. And we should always be aware of the hazard, line of fire hazard around us. Thank you very much for listening. That's it from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. David. That was an in-depth explanation and discussion on line of fire. So thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. Though our time is far-fetched, but I will still have to give one or two persons opportunity to contribute before we close for the day.
Yes, good evening all.
Good evening.
Yes, mine will not be a kind of, it will not really be a contribution, but a kind of appreciation to Mr. David. You've really done a great work, even if in as much as we try to have some kind of glitches in terms of the network at the beginning. So you've done a wonderful job. Though I'm driving, so but I just say it wouldn't be nice for me not to say anything. So I have to go back to the office to fix one or two things. There's an activity that will be happening at the midnight in the facility. So just want to thank you for what you have presented so far today. And based on the topic, you could see it's like it's something that can be done. If you want to really lecture somebody who can take up to 5-6 hours, it's a very broad and volatile, but within the space or limited time, you were able to touch all the things I believe we should know, and as a professional, I believe when we talk about line of fire, is about everything we know. It's all about the risk that is associated with all activity that is related to our job within our job sites, and how to manage such risk or hazard associated with such an activity. So, because when we identify hazard, we identify risk, we are talking about line of fire. Okay, so it's just a more of redefined terminology to be used currently, which really also attracted me and my attention as well. So it's a good thing. It's a good thing. I just want to keep the fire and spirit among us to be really boiling, so that we'll be able to implement what we learned from this interactive session within our respective project site, and also enhance our skills as well. So thank you very much. I want to keep the floor for anybody that have one or two things to say as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stephen, for the contribution. Line of fire is a topic that is very, very interesting, and it seems you find it almost everywhere. It's not like talking about excavation, that excavation hazards and risks exist only within the excavation area, only within a particular specified area. But line of fire risk or hazard is everywhere. You name wherever you are, you can find it everywhere. So it means it's something that needs to be identified in the process. Like he has said that some of them develops while the activity has commenced. It's not, most times it's not always an unsafe condition, like we say it. It becomes, it's something that develops in the process. It's not a static hazard that you say that this hazard will be here. But in the process of the job, the line of fire risk develops and comes up. So that simply means that our eyes needs to be open in our monitoring. We need to be very much present while this activity, while these high risk activities are ongoing, for us to be able to identify these hazards that are coming up while the activities are going on. Even if you have completed your risk assessment, you have done your on-the-job risk assessment, and you have given your permit, you have done everything, all the documents, all the paperwork has been done, but your presence is very, very much needed where the high risk activity is going on. That is why the health and safety professionals are supposed to be on the site, so that you'll be able to identify the risk associated with line of fire and give a adequate control measure or recommendation immediately. So that is it from me. If someone else has something to say, I'll give room for just one person before we go. Okay, I think that is it. So thank you all. Thank you, Mr. David. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, everyone, for attending today. And if you have a specified topic that you want to discuss with us, just reach out to me directly so that we'll make the floor open for you. And if you need CPD certificates, send me a message also so that I'll be able to make your certificate available. All right, thank you guys for coming, and see you again next week, Thursday.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sammy.
All right, thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
Topic from you. We really appreciate you. Thank you once again.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you, guys. Thank you, guys.
Francis, thank you for coming.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Safemi, thank you.
I
Sorry,
greet you, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Which Femi is this? Sorry.
This is Femi from SSAGS.
Thank you,
Okay.
sir, for your organizing the excellent and fabulous seminar. We got lot of information, and inshallah we can implement in our workplace to give the awareness to our employees to reduce the accident and incident. Bundle of thanks for your and please continue this one so that we can receiving lot of knowledge. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Mr. Sabir. Thank you.